nice, wonderful meeting all of you out here. And sorry, I'll go back. Today I'm going to talk about how, as a conglomerates, and conglomerates out here need not only mean old age companies, okay? Any multi-business company, including a lot of, I would say, new age multi-business companies, how they can think about reimagining themselves in the new era of intelligence, in the AI first world. The fundamental premise is that by definition, conglomerates are complex. They have multiple businesses, multiple customer segments, multiple products. The new era of intelligence allows us to turn this complexity into a compounding learning machine. And I'm going to talk about a playbook which hopefully will be useful to all of you in your businesses, whether you are one company, multiple businesses, or in a group you have multiple companies operating in multiple areas. And I also try to bring in an India first lens as I speak into how Indian conglomerates specifically can leverage this intelligence first era. The old formula or the old logic of synergy among businesses or for a conglomerate to enter into a business or an exit a business around asset-based synergy, financial synergy is diminishing. That's no longer necessarily the dominant logic for diversification, because the markets are, in general, has become, including in India, more efficient in coordinating assets cheaply. However, in the era of intelligence, what is scarce is the learning velocity across businesses. How do companies learn using data in the area of intelligence? And how is that learning transferred from one business to another is the key differentiator. And if businesses are not able to address that, they will remain structurally discounted from a market perspective. So as I said, the transaction cost is, the advantage of transaction cost internally is eroding. However, we see a lot of digital business leaders moving into so-called unrelated businesses. So it is not about the scope that is broken. It is the glue that is broken. And the glue is the data. Glue is the insight about the customer base that you are serving. So you see Facebook or a Meta getting into so-called unrelated businesses from where it started, okay, including AR, VR kit. So you might, or Amazon getting into a lot of so-called unrelated businesses. So you might ask yourself why these businesses are getting into so-called unrelated businesses compared to a core business. What binds many of these businesses together, including traditional groups like Tata's or even other groups in the country and outside, is intelligence, and I'm going to talk about it. So what has actually changed? What has actually changed is, in this new era of intelligence, the economics of learning. And that is creating the flywheel. It is not about the model. You can buy models. What you cannot do is buy the learning flywheel, which, if a group can leverage, can basically extract value from that learning and transfer that learning from one company to the other in a group. And it is a non-tradable asset, because that learning, the data you can get from outside you can buy, but that learning that is embedded in the models and algorithms, that cannot be transferred. So there are three core questions as any conglomerate wants to be able to ask. The portfolio logic, what holds the business together? In the era of AI, why are our businesses in a portfolio there together? Why do they belong together? Second question is the operating model. If you have multiple businesses without killing the autonomy of the individual business units, how can we set up processes to learn faster? Third is the distinctive algorithms, which is the group IP, which is the conglomerate IP, which makes the whole smarter than the parts. What distinctive algorithms do we have as a multi-business company or a conglomerate, which others don't have? And in this context, what is the role of the group center? Typically, in a multi-business entity or a group, you'll have a group center. The role of the group center in terms of enabling this. So this is in summary, this is a one-page playbook, okay, which I have tried to put forward. And these are the we have to make some very simple decisions out here. How do you build an intelligence-first portfolio? How do you build an operating model which is geared towards reuse of knowledge and information? How do you share algorithms or intelligence? In this era, trust and consent architecture is very important. How do you do that? In the current geopolitical environment, and which expect it to continue in any foreseeable future, how do you bring in geostrategy as a conglomerate? How do you address talent? And then how do you measure and track the so-called intelligence P&L? So portfolio logic, okay, very important in an era of intelligence and data. The portfolio diversification logic for a conglomerate is centered around how do you leverage data. And classic example is, let's say, Ping An of China, which spans across financial services and healthcare. And the common factor, the denominator, is data about the customer that you have, which allows you to move into a lot of other businesses, so-called unrelated businesses, because typically we will not look at financial services and healthcare as one business. So when you look at your portfolio, one should look at, I call it the intelligence adjacency test. What are the data complementaries you have? What are the algorithms that are transferable between one business to another? And is there identity, customer identity, loyalty overlap? In Tata Group, for example, we have a group-wide loyalty program which cuts across multiple businesses, all the retail businesses, which is quite unique in the Indian context. But for a conglomerate in an emerging market like India, beyond this portfolio logic, in the era of intelligence, I would put forward a couple of more points. Unlike, let's say, developed countries, this new era of intelligence opens up, both for conglomerates as well as startups, completely new business opportunities. And many of them require significant amounts of capital, which conglomerates are in a position to provide. For example, setting up a semiconductor fab. Okay, it is very difficult for a startup to put in that amount of money required. While in the Indian context, a conglomerate can do it. Other is that in India, or in emerging markets, there are a lot of institutional voids in the context of shaping this new era of intelligence. Again, where large groups and companies can come in and fill that void. For example, setting up a EV charging infrastructure. While in a developed country, you will have different players, someone manufacturing electric vehicles, someone manufacturing batteries, someone create the charging infrastructure. While in an emerging country like India, a conglomerate can play a deeper role in this. So in a new era of intelligence, beyond this traditional database portfolio logic, new opportunities and institutional voids in countries, in emerging markets provide additional opportunities. Other is the operating model. Here again, innovation is the key. So the important aspect is empowering the individual businesses rather than controlling them. And how do you do it? For example, a classic example is, for example, ABB. It is a federated structure where, through a common digital platform, algorithms are shared, best practices are shared, which divisions can use, and divisions are incentivized to use in an autonomous manner. Classic example is Blackstone. Being a private equity firm, they have a BXDS, Central Intelligence Group, which enables multiple business portfolios under their company, under their oversight, to learn and share algorithms with each other. In an Indian context of a conglomerate where you have multiple listed subsidiaries, it is challenging, where independent boards, independent governance mechanisms. But within that structure also, it is possible to create governance mechanism, transparent data, anonymized data sharing mechanism to ensure that the knowledge, the insight that is there, which residing in individual companies, can be leveraged across the group. The core central part of it for any companies to identify what are those distinctive algorithms that I can build on top of my data, which is shareable, reusable across various businesses. And some food for thoughts out here, and which we within the group are trying to do, is, for example, in the area of predictive maintenance. How can predictive maintenance algorithms from one industry be leveraged for other industries? Customer analytics. How does customer insight in financial services be leveraged for retail and vice versa, and for travel? Supply chain optimization. How do we use supply chain optimization algorithms and rules and models that are used for one context into another context? Important is the entire financial risk, credit risk, financial risk of counterparties in a B2B context. How do we use the knowledge and insights from one company and put it to other? The critical aspect is from a conglomerate's perspective, how do you incentivize groups to share and use it? And how do you create a governance mechanism where it is done within the regulatory framework? So in this context, the next part is very important. It is basically, and there the role of the central team within a conglomerate is very important. How do you create a trust and a consent architecture? Trust here is not compliance. Trust is a product. You design your products in a manner, your process in a manner, which trust is embedded into it. So I've just given an example of what a good trust architecture looks like. You have a consent vault. You have PII data that is tagged separately, which is not shared. Then you have clean rooms, which you can, the individual group companies can put in that data, and without sharing PII can run analytics. And also an architecture where cross-border data sharing, especially for a conglomerate which has multi-country presence, those guardrails are there. Other important aspect is about ab initio planning for I would say, fracturing world, where you have to assume that it is not about stress testing, It is not a fire drill. It is about, you have to assume that the map will keep moving. We have to architect for a multi-origin compute, jurisdiction-aware AI, be it the ring fencing data, models, logs, keys. The goal out here is not locking into a particular model and approach, but having a framework where you can keep options. Because we are in a scenario right now in the world where the rules and the supply chains linked to this are not settled. They're changing, they're evolving. An important aspect which I cannot overemphasize is in this context, how do you look at talent? How do you look at AI talent, which is very critical and which is scarce in this world of intelligence era? So what we have found out is that treating AI as a shared talent, AI talent as a shared mobile resource. So in Tata Group, we have a Center of Excellence in AI and Analytics, Tata IQ, which works with various group companies to solve AI-specific problems, build models, and then that knowledge and insight is shared, and the individuals also move from one project to another. So if we are able to do this, then the conglomerate of the company just not does remain a company, it becomes from a company to a platform orchestrator. So the role of a conglomerate in an intelligence-first era is not about being a standalone company, but be a platform which others can build upon, others can hook on. The center, the group center will operate API gateways, a developer platform, a clean room, loyalty, identity rails, on top of which the BUs can partner and work on. For example, in the group where we have created our loyalty infrastructure, it is enabled for other group companies in the Tata Group to use for their businesses the loyalty insights that are there. In that context, we're acting as a platform for our group companies to leverage collective insight about customers that we have. I think that the last part is about, if you don't measure, it means what is not measured doesn't happen. It will not scale. So it is important to measure how are conglomerates leveraging the intelligence era. So I call it the intelligence PNL. Okay, are we creating the right matrices to track and measure at a senior-most level, at a board level? Okay, so one has to ensure, and there the role of the group center is very important. What are the for example, tracking, okay, the reuse ratio, the time to scale, the uplift that you are getting from one business to the other. For example, the insight from the retail business, what uplift it is giving for credit approval for the financial services business, and vice versa. And is it aligned to the management incentives? So, but creating the right measurement matrices and tracking them periodically and incentivizing the management is very critical to leverage the insights, knowledge, intelligence that we can have as a group. Now, for this room, I have a set of questions for you to ponder over as we think about how do you reinvent business, not just conglomerates, any multi-business entity in the intelligence era. How do you think about the next 10% of your return on capital? How can it come from group learning, the insights which you already have? Can you think about one or two ideas? Can you think about, if you have multiple businesses, which two businesses at least have hidden algorithm adjacencies? For example, I can give you, let's say, a fraud risk in a retail business, consumer business, can be relevant for fraud for financial services, for example. So there are algorithm adjacencies, and how do you leverage that? Other is data transparency. If you are, a regulator asks you that can you track and trace the consent architecture, consent lineage, can you do it? The last question I would put is that on the AI talent, is that how do you create an incentive structure for AI talent to move from one company to the other? These are my concluding remarks. In the intelligence era, the advantage shifts from owning assets to orchestrating learning at scale. And the conglomerate can choose to be the platform at the center, the one spine for data, algorithms, talent, and trust. So that every local insight, every business unit level insights becomes an enterprise advantage. Thank you.